I think as people join in, shall we start, Ms. Madhuri, Mr. TRK?
I think
Bhavani?
16:05 because I see people slowly. Now
Okay.
I'm seeing the people adding. Plus, I think you have somebody on the YouTube virtual also, isn't it?
Yeah. We will hope Ms. Meenakshi is okay with that.
Yeah, sure.
I think we have to give now two timing, one for the audience and one for us. Audience, we should give around 10 minutes early.
Good evening, Keshavan sir. Good evening, Madhuri.
Yes, Dr. Ravi, how are you?
With all your good wishes, God's grace, I'm fine.
That's very nice. We have everybody. Yeah, I can see people now coming in.
Good evening, Ravi.
Good evening, Bhavani. How are you?
I'm fine, Ravi. And how are you?
First class. God is very kind.
Which is the best thing to happen in life. So, Saraswati Shah, I think we can sort of start.
Yeah. I also feel we can start.
Okay, go
Thank
ahead.
you.
So,
So,
let's welcome
good evening,
Meenakshi
everyone.
also.
Yeah. Thanks for joining and for the Coffee Connect session, another interesting session on the Women Leadership Series under the Women Business Council of the Madras Chamber. And the Women Business Council of the Chamber was started at the peak of COVID 2021, and it was inaugurated by none other than Ms. Mallika Srinivasan, chairman of the TAFE group. And we have been doing a lot of activities. I think Ms. Madhuri will touch upon that. We have both the chair, co-chair, Ms. Bhavani and Ms. Madhuri are here. And we are going to have an interesting conversation with Ms. Meenakshi, and the conversation is going to be led by, again, our president, Mr. T.R. Kesavan. So I would stop here and request Ms. Madhuri to give a welcome note and then leave it to Mr. Kesavan. Just before that, request everyone to put your mobile phones and your video, audio, everything on a muted mode. You can post your questions as and when you get in the chat box. We will take it up at the end of the presentation. Thank you. Over to you, Madhuri.
Thank you, madam. A very, very good evening to everybody. On behalf of my chairperson, Ms. Bhavani, WBC members who are present here, members of the Chamber Secretariat, and on my own myself behalf, I welcome all of you for this Coffee Connect session in this virtual mode on a rainy evening in Chennai. I'm not sure how it is in Delhi, but it's a very nice rainy evening in Chennai here. So one of the Madras Chamber is one of the oldest chamber in the country. It's 188 years old. And one of the initiatives of the chamber is the Women's Business Council. In the council, we aim to promote gender acceleration and to build an inclusive culture in business environments. The primary objective is to enable women to reach their highest potential through learning and awareness and to create opportunities for gender. Under the banner of WBC, a number of new initiatives are being offered for the benefit of the members, more particularly women, which include mentoring support, inclusivity training, connect with thought leaders, business clinics, and panel discussions on relevant topics. We had organized panel discussions on inclusive leadership in challenging times and managing the unconscious bias earlier. And one of the sessions that we have today is our Women Leadership Coffee Connect sessions, where the primary aim is to connect women leaders across different fields, learn from their stories, ideas, and insights as to how they broke the glass ceiling and climbed the ladder of success. We strongly believe that such inspiring real-life examples would motivate more women to come out of their shells and aspire for greater achievements in their career and life, unlocking their potential. So with this background in mind, we have two stars here. One, the first and foremost is our Coffee Connect leader, Ms. Meenakshi Nevatia, who's currently the country president and managing director to Pfizer India, effective April 3rd, 2023. She actually has a Master of Business Administration Strategy and Finance from the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and a Bachelor of Science in Economics and Mathematics from the Presidency College, Kolkata. She has a successful track record of serving in various leadership positions in country, region, and global at different countries. She started off with McKinsey & Co. and moved on to Novartis and then to Stryker, and currently she is where she is as a country president of Pfizer. I am very eagerly looking forward to hear what is her thought process or what are her insights for all of us today. When we have a star, we need to have another star as well, to ask the right questions. Because these days in movies, it is not enough if you have one star. If you have, if you have a Rajinikanth, you need to have a Shah Rukh Khan or somebody also. In that capacity, we thought we should have somebody as powerful as her to connect this coffee connect. And we have Mr. T.R. Kesavan, or K7 as he is normally called, our president of the Madras Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He is the director of TAFE Motors and Tractors, TAFE Access, TAFE Reach, and he's also group president, corporate relations and alliances of TAFE Limited. The TAFE, all of you all know, it's the third largest tractor manufacturer, India's largest exporter of tractor. He's also the president of the Madras Chamber of Commerce and Industry, chairman of National Committee on Agriculture of FICCI, chairman of Vision Group, convener special initiatives under the Food, Agriculture and Retail Committee, governing council member of the ARI, which is Automotive Research Association of India. He's a member of Club of Bologna in Italy. And he's got, so I can just keep going on about him today, but then I think, it is more to hear what they are there to, to talk about it. And I'm very eagerly looking forward for that. With this two powerful people around us, I am actually looking forward to hear what they say. Cordially welcome Ms. Meenakshi Nevatia again and Mr. T.R. Kesavan for joining us for this, and we are looking forward for this. Over to you, Mr. Kesavan.
Thanks a lot, Madhuri. Thanks a lot for the nice words. I think I also reflect that we have an important person as far as I am concerned today. And let me welcome Meenakshi for this opportunity and ability to discuss with her a little bit about her leadership, and as a woman, the way her leadership is leading to. So my first question to you today will be, I've been seeing that the day you graduated from IIM and then you joined McKinsey, you opted for something connected with hospital or pharma. Any specific reason for you to make such an early decision? Because people in the master, I'm really talking about 94, 90s, in the 90s, everybody wanted to jump into some different business, but very few people I have seen getting into McKinsey, that also into specialization or working towards a pharma or the healthcare system. Over to you, Meenakshi. Just very curious to know what made you to go there.
Okay, so firstly, thank you so much, Mr. Kesavan and Madhuri and Saraswati and Ms. Bhavani. Very nice to meet you, and I'm very thankful to you for inviting me to this forum. So this is meant to be a dialogue. So although in the beginning, maybe Mr. Kesavan and I will do all the talking, but would love to get all your questions. The more the questions, the more interesting this will be. So looking forward to it. So yeah, just to maybe get straight into your question, Mr. Kesavan, sometimes the best things happen by accident, right? So yes, with McKinsey, when I was on campus, this was 92 to 94, I was doing my MBA. And nowadays the students, because when we go back to campus, they have a much clearer idea of what they want to do, what their careers want to be, where they see themselves in 5 years. In my time, it was unfortunately not like that. We were just, we were more drifting along with the flow. And McKinsey at that time was a day zero company. It was one of those companies that we had this concept of day zero. It used to be day 1 to 3, and then some companies became even more important, so they came on day zero. And it was really just a few of us. If you have a decent rank and so on, you can apply to McKinsey. So I think it was more just the flow that if you are keen on a business career, you would apply to McKinsey. If you get in, it's a no-brainer. You take the job. If you don't get in, then you look for something else. So that's how I applied to McKinsey, honestly. There was not that much thought that went into it. Yes, they had started recruiting since 92, and we had 2 batches of seniors that had gone to McKinsey, and we, of course, knew who they were, and they were all well regarded. So that always helps because you see who's gone there before you. And that's how I applied, and I got through McKinsey. And then in McKinsey, the staffing on projects in the early days was totally really by accident, in a sense, because, you know, unlike the students of today who come with a lot of industry experience, most of us we finished our college and we went straight into business school. So we were not really carrying much experience. It was just that having cleared IIM Ahmedabad and gotten into McKinsey, there was a certain assumption made about what we are capable of. But other than that, there was nothing else. So my first project, in fact, was a textile project with a mill in Bombay, actually. And then, you know, I did a small project in banking, and then my third project was in pharma. So it was really just by accident. And I found the pharma piece extremely interesting. And so I started doing a little bit more work there. And before you know it, you're called a specialist. And before you know it, you actually start thinking you're a specialist. So I think it was one of those kind of virtuous cycles that got me into pharma. But once I tasted it, I really found it extremely interesting, extremely rewarding, both intellectually as well as some of the impact that you can have working in this sector really does keep us all going quite a lot. Yeah.
Thank you, Meenakshi. Actually, very nice to hear that, because whoever can convert an accident into a successful career can be definitely a very interesting person. So I think I need to give that to you, because I've been seeing that afterwards, after you left IIM and joined McKinsey, then you went to companies like you were in Novartis, and then you moved into a very different company, basically because it's a Stryker group, where you got into the medical equipments and appliances before you moving into a place like Pfizer, heading the India operations as a country president and director of Pfizer. So my next question obviously will be to you is, I've seen there is a very clear career path you have assigned yourself after you left McKinsey. So what made you to choose that very specific career path? Because I also noticed suddenly from pharma, you also went into the equipment sector, where they are one of the leaders as far as the medical equipments are concerned. So what made you take this particular career path? Is it something what you wanted to do, or it is some challenges you wanted to face?
So yeah, Mr. Keswan, actually, you know what, I think you also will agree with me. Sometimes when you look back at your career, it looks very well planned, but it's not always like that when you are in the moment, right? But yeah, to some extent, I did have a plan, but of course that changed along the way. But in McKinsey, I did a lot of work in pharma. And then at that point, McKinsey was doing a lot of its pharma work in the US. So that's when I went to the US for a couple of years. So it was really helpful to be in the country where a lot of the new work was being done. So I built a lot of, connections, network, got to know a lot of people from McKinsey who were working in this sector. And then I moved to South Africa. Both my husband and I got married in 98 to Narasimhan. He's also from Chennai. And then, he was with Procter & Gamble, and he got a chance to move to South Africa. So I also then, was able to move to South Africa with McKinsey. And so that's where we were. And that's when I started doing a lot of client development work, because by then I was like an associate partner. So a lot of your responsibility becomes client development. And at that point, I did one project, which was for me, my life-changing, my most special period of my life. This was a one-year project. It started as a 3-month project with the Ministry of Health in Botswana. And Botswana at the time had almost a 43% HIV prevalence. So literally 2 to 3 out of 5 people were HIV positive. So it was an epidemic. Like, we've gone through COVID, they went through HIV, which has got, there's only one way HIV goes, right, in those times. So this project was basically to drive, at that point, treatments were being launched for HIV, and the whole project was to launch this treatment from MSD into the country. That was a project that we got hired for, and I was the leader on the project. And so we moved to Botswana and we started living there. And that to me was a life-changing experience, because in the first month, it became very clear that that while, we had all these solutions, these therapies were being launched, but the stigma associated with being diagnosed as HIV positive was so high that most people did not know that they have the disease, right? So there was no diagnosis and there was too much stigma. So the entire focus of the project changed. We got into grassroots level awareness programs and execution. We even went to the church to have them talk about, sexual education and HIV spreading and so on. So what was meant to be a 3-month project became 1 year. That was one of, I did a lot of work with McKinsey, but this was probably the one where I felt that we made the biggest difference, because we were out there implementing. We were not doing any PowerPoints. We were not making any presentations. We were not having boardroom meetings. We were just literally there talking to people, getting things done, getting policies passed, and doing real work. And I think that was, to me, emotionally, it was a huge project, because, we even, for example, we had to even pass a policy in the government so that they could do burials vertically, because people were dying so quickly that, there was just no space to do burials horizontally. So it was really very intense, very deep. And after that project, I just couldn't go back and do PowerPoints and presentations and all that. It was just like, I just felt, okay, now I just need to get on and do something more, which is really executing and implementing. And I don't want to do consulting anymore. So I think that to me changed my entire, I loved my experience at McKinsey. Anytime, if I could rewrite my career, I would start exactly in the same way. So nothing to take away from the first 8 years and how much I learned and the people I worked with. But at that point, it just felt right to move into the industry. And a lot of my, McKinsey, a couple of my McKinsey partners had joined Novartis in strategy. And they, of course, they always know when someone starts thinking in this way. So they reached out to me, and I was sitting in South Africa. Switzerland was where I got my job. It was quite far away. But Narasimhan also was able to move with P&G to Geneva. So we then moved, and that's how it all started. So that was the way I kind of left consulting and came into pharma, because I just wanted to be somewhere where there is, action. And then with Novartis, I was there almost 15 years. But it felt much shorter, because every 2-3 years, we were like moving countries. So sometimes you move companies. In our case, we moved countries, right? So we were in Switzerland, then I went to UK, then Spain. So moved with Novartis almost 5 countries. And around 2018, 2017 actually, our son, by then, my son's name is Arjun. He was 9 years old, and he was growing up like this foreign kid, right? Because he was born in London, then grew up in Barcelona. He spoke Spanish and English, but he did not speak Hindi or Tamil, which is my language and my husband's language. So, so we thought it'll be good for him to live in India for at least a few years before he becomes a teenager. And hopefully he likes it, and then we'll be here for long. And our parents were also getting quite old. So that's when we made a decision to come back to India. This was 2018. We could move to either Delhi or Bombay. Narasimhan got a great option to come as India head for his company. He had moved from P&G to Reckitt. And Novartis was, at that point, there was no country role in Novartis. I was going to get a regional type role, which they were willing that I could do it from Delhi. And I suppose, as part of my, I'll talk a little more about, what I feel is important, but I definitely have had a couple of very valuable mentors along the way. And both of them were very clear that if I'm coming back to India, it'll be good if I can come back into a P&L role instead of some kind of a regional role, because, otherwise there'll just be this perception about regional roles. So I just stuck it out with Novartis. I was commuting weekly between Bangkok and Delhi. And then the Stryker role came up. And, I had been 15 years with Novartis, and joining another pharma company at the time did not feel right, because, I was just so committed to Novartis. So Stryker was, it hit that sweet spot, because it was a country head role. It was in the world of healthcare. It was in medical technology, which is an area where I had never worked. But it was not pharma, so they were not directly competing with Novartis. And also they were really keen on me. So that made me very intrigued because, they were very keen to have me lead the business when I knew nothing about medical technology. I'd been away from India for 20 years. So, they were willing to take that chance on me. So that made me very attracted to the company. And that's how I joined Stryker. So a very long answer to your short question, but I thought I'll just tell you the why behind each decision, actually. Yeah.
I think I wish a lot of people hear this answer, because very few people I genuinely see both in the consulting and the pharma field who have actually had that feet on ground experience. I'm going by my personal experience with people. Because I think unless you have that kind of experience, you really don't see the importance of what you're doing. So I think that connect has been fantastic, and really, I'm really happy to hear that. I'll give you one small information. See, we all joined L&T, and it was in the 70s. So L&T was very clear that we will not, you won't believe when I say this, they said we will not recruit any IIMs. And you'll be surprised. And they said, you join us, and then we will provide you after 4, 5, 6 years. We will ensure that you go to an IIM or any management what we want. See, one of the fundamental reasons where they said this was that we want people who are willing to do shop floor, hardcore working experience. And they believed that when you get into some of the IIMs, you may lose it, because then you like to more and more do exactly what you said, presentations and concepts and strategies. And they said, we want somebody who has worked on the field. So I think it's a great experience what you had, especially looking at the way your career progressed. I think you have touched upon everything, right from seeing the most difficult. You talked about the pandemic of Botswana, or the pandemic of HIV, which actually encompasses many countries in Africa. A lot of people don't know about that kind of problems, what people have gone through. And I want somebody to really understand the meaning when you said burial, which is vertical. And that actually gives them the significance of what a country has been going through. And I really need to say that you have a lot of courage to be there at that time, because I know a lot of people were, even for a corona, there was quite a few people who were hesitant even to look at a patient. While we say that majority of our medical care helped them, but there are still people who used to say, more than medical people, our own people used to shun people. And this is one problem we also faced in the HIV pandemic in the early days. So I'm very happy to see a very valuable action what you have done. I'm sure you have a phenomenal learning because of that. I'm not going to ask you the challenges right now, because I think you have indicated a lot of challenges already. Now, one thing which made very interesting when you told me, you said, my mentors told me that please look at a regional role. I mean, it's a nice thing that, so I'm going to really ask you a different question here is, what is your leadership style and what is your own philosophy? Since you have seen so much, you have been working in the region, you have worked it globally, you went through a very difficult pandemic experience. So how do you categorize your own leadership experience after so much of experience you've gone through, both mentally, physically, and emotionally?
Yeah, Mr. Keswan. So it's I think I would say my style changed also over time, no? So I think I'll talk a little bit more later, maybe about adapting to different situations. But for me, kind of the turning point in defining my leadership style as it is now was in 2005 or 6. Actually. So like your example of L&T, right, where they didn't want to recruit these IIM types because they would come in thinking too highly of themselves or whatever, right? So similarly in Novartis in those days, there used to be a culture that if you ever want to be a general manager or a country head, you need to do sales. there was no debate there. It was almost like if you haven't done sales, you are not even going to be considered. Now, here I had come after being a partner in McKinsey. I was heading up strategy for cardiovascular in Novartis. And then my CEO told me that Meenakshi, to grow in the direction you want to grow, you need to do sales. And my first reaction was, why do I need to do sales? I've done 8 years of, I'm leading large teams. I know what to do. And he just said, trust me, do it, and then we'll talk. And, I suppose at that point, I wasn't thrilled about the advice, but he was my CEO and I respected him wildly. And I thought, okay, fine, just do it. It's not a big deal. Let me just try. And honestly, that was really my, I have to owe him a lot, because that was really, it changed my leadership style completely. Because before that, I was very task focused. I was very rational. I was very much about, tough decision making, things like that. Whereas after that whole sales experience, it changed completely, because, what you realize is, as a leader, you'll never know what's happening. I was a sales rep, then I became a sales manager. And then, of course, I went back into leadership roles and all. But in my sales manager role, I realized that, as a leader, it's impossible to know everything. So you are always relying on your people to, be better than you at their job. The second is that the only thing that matters is how well the team you've built and how well the team is motivated to do their job when you are not with them. So, we used to do these sales rides, right? Every day I would go out with one rep or the other rep, but I had a team of 10. So of course, only twice a month I was with one person. The remaining 18, 20 days of the month, he or she was alone, right? And so then you realize, okay, those days that you are with them actually doesn't matter. What matters is the days when you're not with them. So a lot of things, I started realizing the importance of building the right team, the importance of, motivation of people, the importance of that one phone call just to say, okay, Madhuri, how are you doing? No agenda. I'm not asking you anything. It's just to check in on you. And I used to call all my team every 2-3 days just to catch up. So it changed me a lot, because I feel I became much more connected to my people. I became much more, I think, down to earth. Before that, maybe I had a little bit of arrogance, which was absolutely not healthy. I became a lot more, execution focused versus strategy focused. So I think a lot of things changed. Until today, I've tried to, irrespective of the job I'm doing, I've tried to retain that. So even now in my current job, I decided that, at least 1 day a week, if not 2 days a week, I need to be on the field. And I've seen that has made a huge difference, because when I'm out with the salespeople, in front of the customer, yes, they try to position me as country head or whatever, but at the end of the day, they are the hero, because they own the relationship. And the amount I learn when I'm in the field, either watching them with the customer or even waiting with them outside the customer's room, you learn so much about what the culture is, what's really going on in the company, what the practices are, how compliance is being driven, what are their challenges. So it's been something till today I do hold very dearly, that desire to just connect with the people on the ground, because that's where the real action is often. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I think that was a very, very open and honest statement, because very few people actually say that I was arrogant. And I'm amazing to hear you saying that, because somebody who says that I thought I was arrogant has come to a next level of understanding of oneself. And I tend to agree that with you, because you actually emphasized on empathy than sympathy. And if you don't empathize with your people, and I don't think you really understand what's going on and what is going on, because it's not an individual's work alone. The individual is surrounded by many factors of life. It's interconnected. His home, family, then it has got his work targets, then it has got his customer. Everything is pulling him in different directions. So understanding and making them. So this is where I think I am going to call you. There's a difference between a leader is somebody who really, I won't really call them somebody leading from front, but I am saying somebody who is willing to fight a battle along with the team. It is slightly different from leading from the front. So I think I really have very, very happy to hear your statement, because I genuinely believe the great leaderships have really grown only after understanding what is happening on the ground level. So that's an absolutely brilliant statement. And this also really talks about your philosophy and your style of functioning. Now, again, one more question connected with this is, you have been in connect with a lot of younger leaderships in this system, whether you are working with Novartis or you're working with Stryker or you're now working with Pfizer. And you also find people who are difficult to deal with. I'll be extremely happy to hear that from a women leader, because how do you handle, what is your way of handling people who are difficult to work with? Or how do you make them understand a different way of working probably is good for you, not for us, good for you?
Yeah.
You may have some experience. You can share some experience, because I'm sure a lot of our people in the system may like to know.
Yeah. I mean, you see, I think it's a very relevant question. And often, earlier I used to think some, people are difficult to deal with or not. But now I stopped thinking to deal with. But of course,
are we missing? You have a voice problem, I think, Meenakshi. I think
there were many such examples, right? So,
sorry, madam, we just lost you
hello?
a couple of minutes there.
Yeah, we lost you a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Now is it better?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I was just saying about my, the experience. I was talking about people, the example of the question around difficult to deal with. So my first experience of that was actually in Novartis when I was in sales. I went as a sales manager. I was about maybe 33, something like that. So not very young, but everybody in my team, I had an extremely experienced team. They were all 40 plus. And they were seasoned salespeople, right? They had been in sales all their careers, like, proper English sales reps. Some women, some men, but all seasoned sales reps. And here I was coming, with hardly any 6-month sales experience, things like that. So it was very natural for them to not feel like, not see me as being very credible, right? So I think at that point, that was my first instance of, okay, how do I actually work with them? And I learned very quickly that I'm never going to be better than them at their job, right? That's not my job. My job is not to be better than them at their job. My job is to help show direction. My job is to help remove barriers that they might be facing to get their job done. My job is to drive a team spirit so that they can all lean on each other and work much better. And in some cases, my job is also to help them grow themselves in their careers, right? In terms of, making them feel like, okay, in working with Meenakshi, I can go further in my career. So I pretty quickly changed from trying to be a top salesperson to trying to be a proper manager. And I think that transition is something I have to always tell my people, that as a leader, your job is not to be better than your people at anything. In fact, if you can hire people who are much better than you at everything, you will have a much better team. So this is not a battle of who's better at their job, right? If I'm hiring a supply chain person, he should anybody at the job they're doing. So I think with that spirit, it just helps build the right team, and and then you find that it's not so much that people are difficult. It's just that they need to be understood, and the moment they feel that there's some value you can add, everybody becomes very it becomes much simpler to work with such people. So that would be my biggest lesson, I guess, in terms of how to work with people that seemingly seem difficult to work with, but actually the problem is with you, not with the person. Mr. Kesavan, you're on mute.
I kept it on mute. Sorry. What I'm saying is, I wish a lot of leaders understand what you're saying, because one of the problems we come through, especially in my experience, of the last almost 50 years is, there is a lot of difference between a specialist and a leader. A leader need not be a specialist, exactly what you said. You need not be a top salesperson, but you need to how to manage. I think this is one of the problems I think all the companies in the world is facing, and many leaders are facing this, because I'll say there are two reasons for this. One is because a question of their own, let me say, insecurity. So sometimes the people feel, if I don't know more than him, will he listen to me? It's a very typical question which always comes in life. The question, I think what we need to understand is, how do I add value when I am going to have people much more specialized than me working with me? I think that's what you're trying to demonstrate. That's what your side to said. And I'm very happy you said that, because I know this is an issue which a lot of today's world is facing. And I've seen a lot of people struggling with this to get the team working. So the team manager is, so we always used to say in the past, the S category and the G category of people in our old HR roles. I think people have forgotten all about that. But thanks for specifically saying that. I'm really sure that the people who work with you would have really enjoyed working with you, because this is a great way of putting people at ease and creating a great team with this kind of leadership. Again, a question related to this. In India, unlike US and unlike Europe or US or other places, we don't see too many of the ladies working as medical representatives. Is my statement right or wrong?
Yes, sir. Actually, that's one of my big challenges. I had the same challenge in Stryker and now in Pfizer as well. So we do not have many, we've got good, in Pfizer, we've got a good diversity percentage, but in sales, it's a very small percentage compared to where we should be. And the same in Stryker as well, I found. Yeah.
So the question here is, what do you think are the reasons? And how do you think that you will be able to make a significant change in this? Because this is something I've been seeing. Even people have talked to me about this, that how to bring in that concept of bringing in ladies into the sales function of medical sales. I know it's not easy, it is difficult, but I genuinely believe a change is necessary there also.
Yeah.
Because tomorrow, if you want to get good people who have the field experience, and if you want to get the ladies with the field experience, that's the only way they can get.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there are 2-3 things we are trying, and that is one of my priorities as well, in terms of from a culture perspective. The first is that, we have to keep reminding ourselves that our customers are truly diverse. So we have enough women doctors and men doctors. We have all the nurses we talk to are largely women. So the customer group is very diverse. So that is not the reason why, sometimes if you have an all male, like, in say mining or in refineries or something where the audience is all male, you can assume that, okay, there is some reflection of that in the sales force as well. But in our case, our customer base is very, very diverse. So there is no real reason from that perspective. I think when we've tried to diagnose what is it, I think it comes down to 2 or 3 issues. A, there's a certain perception about the job of a sales rep. And, sometimes that perception is, it's less about the learning and the quality of the work, and it's more about, the amount of travel that's involved, that you have to be having meals with customers, that you have to be meeting customers, the timings are not really very favorable. There's a lot of perception, a lot of myths about it. And that is something we are trying to also, demystify that, that's really not the case. It's not like, we are, for example, a Bombay sales rep does not really have to travel outside Bombay. The hours are very manageable. And yes, if you have to work late, we will provide the transportation. In terms of meals, we don't allow any of our salespeople to have meals with customers because of compliance reasons. So there's a lot of assumptions and myths which we first have to demystify when we are trying to recruit. The second is that, when I started talking to my talent team in Pfizer and even in Stryker, the same thing happened. They would always tell me that, Meenakshi, there are just no women who are applying for the job. And that is true. The women don't apply. But unless it all depends where we are looking for the women, right? If we are looking for hiring from other pharma companies, we are not going to find women because they are not there. Similarly, in Striker, where we were looking to hire from other medtech companies, we were not finding the women. Then we started hiring fresh graduates. We started hiring nurses who wanted to not do continue nursing and come back mainstream. We started hiring some physiotherapists who wanted to move into sales. And then we started seeing the difference in Striker. So similarly, now we are also starting to target some consumer good companies. So it all depends where you look for talent, because if you look in a male dominated pool, there is very low chance of finding women, right? So I think that's also completely on us as a company. Where are we really looking to hire? And then that's the second thing we are changing, is to start to, look more carefully. Then we also found that there's a geographical difference, in places like Mumbai, Pune, and Bengal, we are finding it easy. There are more women who are in sales. Whereas in some other parts of the country, there are a little bit less. Could be cultural, could be the age at which women get married, then they don't want to do a sales role, etc. So those are also cultural myths that we are trying to break into. So a lot of effort is needed, but I think it starts with the intention to make sure that we are, at least in every hiring pool, we have at least one woman. Then the decision on who we hire is totally based on talent. But at least in the pool, we must have women. Otherwise, we'll never be able to break this bottleneck. Yeah.
I know this has been a challenge, especially in this area. And we also been having the similar challenges in some of the areas in the other industries also. I mean, I know that some places it has been slowly changing. And one place we find the changing happening in a big way is actually in the rural areas. Many rural areas, and if you can restrict the woman to travel within their rural area, they are more comfortable than doing it, because that's a known, I call it a known territory, and they consider it a safe territory. So this is something that happened even for us. Where this question was very relevant, because, we always talk about diversity and inclusion. So whenever this question comes, this question of how do I get what we call as a job, which is a unisex kind of a job. Men and women both are equally able to do that kind of job. Is really becoming the way the jobs are getting redefined nowadays. So I know there is a problem here, and I'm happy that as an industry you are. Is there any specific training grounds which actually trains women medical representative in India as a body, so that they can help across all the medical manufacturing or pharma setups? Is there anybody like that doing this work across?
I think there are these skilling groups that are beginning to come up, but just as example, like we would normally B.Pharm is a degree that we would normally seek, right? So a lot of colleges now are offering Bachelor of Pharmacy degrees, and that is where we typically are going to recruit people. And then what happens is companies, let's say in our case, right, for a person to be a qualified sales rep, they need to have basically 3 skills. The first is product and disease knowledge, which we can train them on. As long as they've got the general orientation to be trained on health, which B.Pharm graduates normally do, the product, we can bring in somebody who knows nothing about oncology or cancer, and we can train them that, because that is just very rational training. So that is the first thing that companies themselves normally do that training, because we train on the disease, we train on the product, we train on the competition, we train on how the drugs work, etc., etc. So that's best done by the company. The second skill we train on is really selling skills. Now, like how to sell a product, and that doesn't mean how to push a product. It doesn't mean how to, shove a product. It's about how to ask the right questions. It's about how to understand unmet need. It's how to position a product, how important it is to talk about where to use our product, whereas where they should not use our product, and how that brings, builds a lot of credibility. So there again, selling skills, that is something that could be taught more universally, but typically companies are doing it themselves. So that's the second piece. Yeah. And then the third is all the functional skills we give them, on compliance behaviors, or, kind of the rules of the company, the code of conduct. Those things, again, are best done by the company themselves. So while there could be agencies, I did meet one recently that's like a skilling company that is looking to train salespeople, but a lot of it is done in the company themselves.
Okay. Why I asked this very specific question was that Government of India and also a lot of state governments are spending very special thrust in skilling. So I was just wondering whether the pharma companies together, they create a skilling area for women, and maybe you'll get a government support also. Just leaving the thought with you.
Yeah.
That is one thing. Now, I think we talked about diversity and inclusion. What will be the percentage of women normally in the pharma industries today if we do not consider the medical reps into that?
So, like in our case, in both in Stryker as well as in Pfizer is a little higher on diversity, but we would be about maybe 25%, roughly 23, 25%. So we find we've got a huge organization in Chennai, for example, which is our development and research organization. There, the diversity ratios are definitely higher. Because the job profile is quite different, right? Because it's very defined hours. There's a lot of opportunity to work from home, and it's just literally traveling from home to office and back. So office-based jobs are always easier to manage the diversity, and we've got pretty good ratios there. Then in our plant organization, interestingly, in our plant in Goa, we've now started getting a lot of women. So we are still just below 20%, but still that's quite good actually, because now we even have women in the night shift, and we are beginning to see women even in our manufacturing facility. In Visakhapatnam, which is our export-oriented unit, we've got a very high percentage of women, relatively speaking, almost 1/3. And the reason for that is the organization there has done a lot of work in going to the villages nearby, recruiting women, girls, bringing them to Visakhapatnam. We then send them to college during the day, and in the evening they work a few hours in the factory. And then we bring their parents over to show them the kind of living they have. So it's beginning to grow quite nicely. And then in our sales organization, like I said, it's still under 10%, but we need to grow. So it's different in different parts, but it's increasing in every area. So that's really good. And I'm very happy with our increase in areas like manufacturing. But in sales, there's still some work to be done. I think because of the traveling nature of the job and because of the timing of the job, because, our salespeople start at 8, but they often end the day at 9, 10, or even 8 o'clock. It's less predictable. You need to be able to answer the phone when your customer calls. So it's got less predictability versus an office job.
True, very true, because I think we have seen the same even in our own industries. Salespersons who are traveling is little difficult, but salespersons who are in the retail setup or retail shops is much easier to manage.
Yeah.
So the salesperson has always been a problem for all of us. But I hope these things will change as we find more and more women coming into the system. And it's going to take time, but as you rightly said, depending upon which geography you are in, and you will find this change happening.
Yeah.
Because I've seen this in geographies, more women working also. You can see them working now in petrol pumps and other areas, which used to be a domain of male in the past. But you see, but it's all conducive to that specific society where they are working in. So I fully agree on this point. I'm not going to talk to you on mentorship and support because I think you did talk about it. I know how much you enjoyed your mentor, and I know that you will be mentoring your people. So my next question, because I'm also looking at time, I think I got a very important question, because you being a woman, and as well as you also married into a very different family. I mean, one good thing is Calcuttites and South Indians have a lot of commonality in many areas. That's a great thing to talk about. How do you manage your work life? Because this is the question which always comes in with people. Because somehow, I don't think that this is right when I say that, people think men manage the work life easier compared to women. I find that both have their own issues. But women tend to have little more which I do agree. So the question apt for a woman will be, how do you really balance your work life? I think this can be a very, very thought-provoking answer to many of the women here listening to you. And you can always say, I don't even manage it. I mean, that's also an answer. I mean, I'm not saying that that's a wrong answer, but it's a question that people, we need to accept that. So what will be your thought in this, Meenakshi?
Yeah. So I think, let me start with a basic thing, which is that, what do you define as work-life balance, right? So at least, and all of us define it very differently, but at least in my case, I've never defined it based on how many hours I'm working and how many hours I'm not working. I have defined it based on how much control do I have on my time or to do the things I need to do for my family or for my job, right? If I feel like it's in my hands to define it, then I feel like it's in balance. So I suppose it all depends how everybody defines their, what work-life balance means. And so I think that's to me been the most important thing, that do I feel like I'm in control of how much time I'm spending at work versus at home? And, for some people, it's very well defined. Like for my husband, he works the hours at work, and then when he comes home, he tries to switch off completely. For me, it's far more fluid. I do a lot of personal things during work hours, and I also work a lot at night. And I just find that makes it much easier. I mean, there are days in the weekday when I go for a parent-teacher meeting, but then I'm working on a weekend. And I don't mind working on a weekend because I know I can do the parent-teacher meeting on the work day, right? So I think it's all a function of how you define it. For me, that's how I've defined it, that it's not about the compartments, it's not about the hours, it's about being in control. And so that was the first thing. I think the second is, for all of us who have, everyone has a priority, right? For those that have children, generally children become the priority. Sometimes parents become the priority. So at least in my case, I had my son in 2007. And after that, it's been very clear to me and whoever is had the misfortune of being my boss, that, my son is priority number one, right? So once you define it like that, but that doesn't mean that I will ever not do justice to my work. So I think there again, it helps a lot because, like anything to do with Arjun, like I said, parent-teacher meeting, he does a lot of math Olympiads, he goes for a lot of chess competitions. So even in my current job in Pfizer, I take a day off and take him for chess competitions because I feel like, that's important, but then I make up for it, right? So I think that would be my second advice, is how to just define the one thing that you will not compromise and, make it clear to your manager. But also equally, it's important to make clear how you will compensate for that. It's not just, it's not an entitlement that, okay, now I'm taking time off. It is a responsibility. So I feel that is important. And I suppose the third thing, and that's my current situation with Pfizer, right? And hence I have huge respect for the company. I always did. But when I was in discussions and I was interviewing for the job, and, there was all this discussion about, joining. And at that point, Narasimhan is, he's heading up Whirlpool, which is Gurgaon based. My son is in class 11. So not the right time to be uprooting and moving to Bombay, right? So, and my job is Bombay based. So after all the discussions, I did make it quite clear that I wasn't looking to move to Bombay. And obviously that might be a challenge to be a country head without living in Bombay. And they were very open. They were like, we trust that you can make it work. So you figure out what you have to do to make it work. But, and so that to me was a very important signal that they were giving it to me. So as a result, the first 3 months of my job, I pretty much 100% of the time stayed in Bombay because I felt like I needed to do that extra mile in the beginning. So yes, that did impact my balance a little bit because of course my family was here. But after that, I go there 3 days a week and I can easily do my job now because I invested those first 3 months. So I suppose I'm just saying, sometimes there's always a solution, but you just need to be clear what the priority is. And I guess the last thing, which, when I was talking to Mr. Kesavan earlier as well, we kind of joked about it, is the support structure that you have at your home, right? So this gender battle, this work-life battle, I think first is you have to win it in the head, right? You have to be confident that, okay, I can manage. then you have to win it at home with your husband or partner or mother-in-law or daughter or son, whoever it is, right? You need to, that conversation is very important. And I think, I was very fortunate to have married Narasimhan or had a mother-in-law like Amma or had a son like Arjun, because it was very clear to, it was very having that support system. My mother-in-law is in Chennai, but I have to say every time I moved countries 9 times and 5 times was with Arjun. And every move, whether we moved from UK to Spain, Spain to Hong Kong to Thailand, Thailand to Gurgaon, for the first 6 weeks, Amma always was there. She would just come, she would just be there. And her main thing was, I'm here for Arjun, you do what you have to do. Because she knew that she was a teacher as well. So she knew that in a new job, you need to give it your all in your first 6 weeks. And so she was there for just always there. She would just buy a ticket and show up. And so, there are all these people who played, I'm sure you all have people like this in your life who played these roles, but they are absolutely the most important thing, because without that, those 6 weeks that my mother-in-law spent every 3 years in different countries, I don't think I could have been so focused on my job, because I would always worry about how he's settling in, how he's settling in school, does he have a good help at home, who's giving him the food when I'm in office. So I think that support system for me, of course, you need help at home, but for me, that mental confidence that my son is in good hands with my mother-in-law was one of the most important things. So I suppose a lot of different examples, but I think the main thing is feeling like you have control on your life. And if it feels like it's not in control, just change it. No, don't complain about it. That's my other principle. I've always tried to not complain about it, because ultimately it's in my hands. If it's not working, then just find some other solution. But complaining just gets into negative energy. So that's one thing I try to never do.
Well, I think we got into a little bit of philosophy also here for this answer. I think I was telling you yesterday that I have worked with a boss for 30 years who is a lady. And something I always notice is her life is very fluid. She can do the work at home. She can do 18 hours and she can mix this personal and other works, but just keeps it moving. But one thing I think, let me repeat your word, she's in control. She's totally in control and she knows exactly what she wants to do. I think that's the most important part of it. And I think that this, whatever you said just now, is immaterial of whether you are a woman or a man. It makes the same sense, because men tend to feel that they can switch off when they come home, but it's not possible. That reality is going away, especially the kind of work what people start doing. So the question is, how do I balance both? And I know something in life that nobody expects that you do everything immediately. Everybody expects that you do things at the right time and you do not keep things pending. That's all what people really think about you, and do it right. One of the problems I notice a lot of people is they do not prioritize their life, their job, their content of work. They do not understand the difference between what is urgent and what is important. So you can make everything urgent and make a mess of it in life. Happening. I know your time is also a problem. The other question here is family support system, very rightly said. One question which always comes to our mind is, because we are all supposed to be people from a background, we talk about management, we talk about teams. So the question always comes into our mind is, when you can manage such a diverse team in the office, why are you not able to manage the same kind of team in the home? The home is also a team. Only thing is you got some extra attachments and disattachments there, which creates a little more complication. But if you can manage at one place, you should be able to manage at the other. I mean, I'm not getting into details. I'm going to leave it that, because I know this is going to, a lot of questions may really evolve later at this point. How much time we have, Madhuri, now?
So probably we can take one question from here, and because there are other couple of questions in the chat box also from people, so we can ask that as well. So you can.
So I'm not, I think between you and Meenakshi, I want to really genuinely, I have to tell you, I think I had one of the very interesting talks. Normally very difficult to get an open chat with people. Open chatting is the best thing that can happen to life. I mean, that is where you genuinely share, and there is no inhibitions in sharing, no inhibition saying, I made a mistake. I think the biggest victory in life is when I know that I made a mistake. If I don't accept it, I don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that is something brilliant I heard from you today. There's only one question I want to ask you, then I will leave open to the questions. You have now achieved a lot in your life compared to any other lady of that position. What do you want to do further?
Actually, this is a question I asked myself a lot when I was looking to take up the Pfizer job, because, you know, I had the role in Striker, I was living in Gurgaon, and the whole idea that at this age with my son in class 11, do I want to be working in Bombay in the week, come back to Delhi every weekend? You know, is it really worth it? And what am I trying to do? You know, so it was obviously a big question. And I think we've talked about my life. Of course, I've been quite passionate about healthcare from a long time now. And what I saw in the Pfizer job was, you know, an opportunity to make a much bigger difference, I suppose, because, you know, and I know we all say this, so if I'm not sounding authentic, please forgive me, but I really mean it, because, you know, what I saw with the Pfizer job is that, you know, with the brand that Pfizer has, with the medicines that we make, with the large footprint that we have across the country, and, you know, with my desire to do something like, you know, building capacity in healthcare in India, etc., there's a lot of opportunity to combine the company purpose as well as my own purpose of just making a difference and just leaving the place better than when I started. So in that sense, I'm seeing this role as very much a culmination of my, of course, I have a professional target, a professional challenge in terms of, you know, growing the Pfizer business. But with that, I also see the opportunity to fulfill my personal purpose in terms of making a much bigger difference. And I guess the one thing I've told myself consistently is that, you know, I'm now 52. So I still have a lot of years to work, I suppose. But I also feel like I've worked for many years. I've been working nonstop since 94. So it's almost now 30 years. And I took 3 months off when Arjun was born, but that's it. So I feel like I've probably got more years work than more years to work. And in that context, then how it's very important to not just follow the book. Of course, I'll not do wrong things. I'll always do the right thing. But I have to be able to, you know, speak my mind. I have to be able to do what's right for my people, do right for the country, for my job, and not just take directions from people, challenge if needed, ask the tough questions from my global organization about investments in India. And the moment I've, you know, and I had the same feeling in Striker, and I realized the moment you give yourself this right to not be you know, forced into a box or into a label or into, you know, someone else's description of what your job is, you start becoming more empowering. Also, you start giving other people a lot more room to do the right thing. You start giving a lot of other people the room to be creative, because, you know, there's not like a predefined cookbook of what exactly success looks like. So I find that mindset change, which I've had, maybe I turned 52 years ago, maybe that's when I started thinking differently. But yeah, I do feel now that I'm not bogged down by any, you know, kind of I take the top-down direction as guidance, and then I make it relevant for my job and my people. And my boss is fantastic. So he welcomes the challenge, he welcomes the conversation. And there are so many things that he'll come with, and I'm like, you know, Nick, I don't think this is right for India. And he'll be like, okay, so then what should we do? And we come up with a better answer. But now I don't feel scared. So I think the moment you stop worrying about what will happen if I lose my job, you become, I think, a lot more relaxed. And, you know, everybody then becomes more relaxed, and it becomes a very virtuous cycle of, you know, a much better team. So I think that's the place I am in currently. I love my job, but I'm not afraid of losing it. And that makes me love it even more. And I think that's, I suppose, the summary of it all.
I think that's a brilliant summary. That also gives you a lot of security, and you're confident to do the right thing. That's what is important. That's, yes. But we don't talk about your age, because I think my working experience is as much as your age now. So I feel a little old. So it's fine. Then the only one question before we take the question, one word answer. Who is your role model? Everybody has got a role model in life. Who is your role model? It can be a present fellow, it can be somebody who's no more there. Who is your role model? I'm asking this question absolutely off the head.
I'd say my father. I think my father is a businessman. I mean, I'm from a Marwari family, so, we're all businessmen, I guess. And the one thing he taught me, I mean, he taught me many things, but, when I first started, he wanted me to work for him after school. And so I started going to his office and I thought I'll get like a nice job, but he gave me the job of a secretary, typist. I got a typist job. And so he made me learn typing and shorthand and all that. And I was doing all the typing work in his office. And, and so it was such an equalizer because I would be sitting in the heat. I would not have any fan. I was doing all his typing work. But the amount of learning I had, because I was typing all the letters, I was typing all the communication, I would be taking all the notes in all the meetings. So I think that's when I realized the importance of working bottom up, because, until you've had those experiences, that's why the sales role I talked about so passionately, because until you've had those experiences, it's very hard to lead people who are having those experiences, because you don't really know what they're going through. You don't really understand their challenges. So I think he was a man with a lot of wisdom, and there are many other things about him I really appreciate and respect. Yes, but definitely I'd say him.
Thanks.
My husband is a close second, but he's still not there.
You suddenly remembered him, which is good.
I suddenly remembered him, yeah. Yes.
Good.
Before he returns home, yes.
That's okay. No, but I think, again, an honest answer, to be frank with you. What I will now do is I will request Madhuri a few questions, maybe. I think we may have 10 minutes. I think you can get a few questions. What do you think the best of the questions? You can request her. We'll request her to answer, take those questions. Can you read out the questions, Madhuri?
Sure, I can. So this is one from Hamsa. She says, I actually love the way you're sharing your experiences candidly. I'm curious to learn a bit more about your initial resistance and your pivot from delivery to sales. What does your mental checklist, for the lack of better word, she says, look like as you have pushed yourself out of your comfort zone, and how has that perspective evolved over the years? So that's the question that Hamsa has asked.
Yeah. So thank you, Hamsa. And I saw later in the chat, there's also a point around functional flexibility. And I think in some sense it's related, because I do think, like when I said earlier, I suppose my initial resistance to move into a sales role was, it was like I was in the leadership team of the UK Novartis organization. I was leading the strategy function there as well. And then suddenly to go to becoming a sales rep on the ground was just quite a shift, right? Because, it was a sudden change of, the role, the impact, the perception, everything. So initially there was that resistance. But now when I look back, it was just my ignorance that made me have that resistance, because in a way, the collection of the different experiences, and I do feel I've been lucky that way, but whether it's different functions, and that's where the functional flexibility comes in, or whether it's different. In my case, it was different geographies. I worked in 5 different countries in my country head roles. So those different experiences add a lot, because when you worked across experiences, then this whole concept of D&I comes more naturally, because in most cases, I was the outsider. I was the minority. I needed to be included. So when you are putting yourself in those positions where you are the minority, your entire outlook and ethos of D&I is much more natural, because you know what it's like to be a minority and you know what it takes to include a minority, right? So now I feel like it just helps make it a lot more natural. I don't have to think 10 times about D&I, because I've been on the other side for most of my life. So I think that's probably a little bit of where I see it now. And I always, even when we have talent discussions now in my company, we always talk about lateral moves being extremely important. Of course, if we can promote people to the next level, we will. But I think, like you were asking, Mr. Kesavan, people who are wanting to be general managers, unless they've done both sales, marketing, supply chain, in some cases, even finance, when they actually get the job, they will be out of their depth on some areas, right? And like I said, they don't have to be experts, but I take myself now, right? I'm not going to be a finance expert, but unless I can see my P&L inside and out, in 5 minutes, I'm not a country head, right? My job is not to just sell. My job is to manage the P&L as well. So there are skills you need, and you don't get much time when you are in these senior roles to build those skills. So the more you can build at junior levels, the more experiences you can collect, the more credible you become. And when times are tough, like we just had a recent situation, we had a product recall, and it's public news, that's why I can talk about it. But, product recall for a company, and it was because a supplier had not done something, and so we had to recall. It puts a lot of stress in the system. But if you've been through that before, if you have experience of quality, you have experience of procurement, you have experience of, regulatory, suddenly it's much easier to pull together the right team and lead them through a crisis. So I do feel like, yes, there are people who can get promoted very quickly, but the more you've built lateral experiences, the better leader you will be, particularly in tough times.
Thank you. I
Thank
think
you. That's very interesting. So Srividya Sundaramurthy asks, where is the question? Yeah. What qualities are lacking among today's women leaders? And asking this question to identify my strengths and weakness. So that's Srividya's question for you. So she wants to understand what are the qualities that are lacking among today's women leaders.
So Srividya, I will turn the question back at you. And this is thanks to one of I've had many good leaders as bosses, but one of them was this lady, Sue Webb. She was in the UK. And she told me very clearly that don't worry about what you're lacking, focus on your strengths. So I think first is, I see a lot of strengths in today's women leaders, whether it's resilience, whether it's ability to multitask. I think Mr. Kesavan talked about empathy versus sympathy. That's a very important difference. It's a very fine line, but nobody is looking for sympathy at work, but everybody is looking for empathy, that, as a leader, you can understand what your people are feeling. So I think there's a lot of skills that many women leaders are bringing to the table. The couple of things I do feel that I also, with some of my mentees who are women, I do say that first is, there's no reason to be like someone else. So this feeling like I need to behave like a man, I need to network like a man, I need to go out for dinners and parties, I need to learn how to play golf, I need to, entertain at night. That is all, that is one way to do it. I don't do any of that. And I've been perfectly fine, right? So it's not like there are different ways we can do it. I'm not designed. I would rather have dinner with Arjun than with anybody else in the world. So I don't have dinner with people. I just come home and have dinner. But that means that when I'm having one-on-ones with them, we have over coffee and we chat and we build connections and I stay in touch and I remember their birthdays and, we build a relationship in other ways, right? So I think that's the first thing, that sometimes people do come in with a perception that I need to operate in a man's world like a man, and that I sometimes feel it's just not having the experience of behaving differently. But yeah, that is one thing that I do talk about. And the second is in terms of, the feeling that, kind of you need to be really tough. And yes, we need to be tough when it comes to decisions and, issues, but we don't have to be tough on people. So that's the only second piece I'd like to difference between, being tough, being determined, being disciplined when it comes to decisions, issues, business problems. Absolutely, yes. But when it comes to people, there is really no reason to be. Yes, we need to be tough in the sense if there's a low performer, of course, we need to manage it. I'm not saying that, but that can also be done in a very gentle, empathetic way. So it doesn't have to be in that very tough poker-faced way. So that's at least how I believe we should operate. But everyone has their own style. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Jisha, your first question, I think, is already answered in terms of, style of balancing professional and personal life. I think she's answered that. She also has a second question. What's your advice or initiative or perhaps tips on women empowerment or bring up women leaders towards journey on leadership? I can repeat, what's your advice or initiative?
No, I'm seeing it in the chat box, Madhuri. Okay. I was trying to read it. Yeah.
So that's from Jisha Sandeep Kumar.
Yeah. I guess, Jisha, if you mean at the workplace, I think it's really as a leader, I mean, you can, the first thing is the question Mr. Kesavan asked, right? How do we ensure that we have the right representation in our teams? And that's very important. Once you have a certain minimum, 20-25%, it becomes a much more balanced team, right? Ideally, we want 50-50. But I think even if we can get to 30-35%, you get that balance, you get that 1 out of 3 voices are, coming from a woman's mind and heart. So that balance in making sure you have the right team is definitely important. When it comes to women empowerment, I actually don't think like that. Honestly, I'm now thinking actually that's where the point about even for men, sometimes empowerment is a common topic for both women and men. So in the workplace, to be honest, I don't differentiate. I don't allow my HR team also to differentiate in terms of, we want to make sure we bring in the right women, we bring in enough women. We want to make sure the workplace is conducive for them to be feeling safe and empowered. But when it comes to culture initiatives, when it comes to empowerment initiatives, we do not differentiate between men and women because, they sometimes, and I'm saying this being a woman, sometimes it's easier for us to speak our mind. Sometimes it's more challenging for men to speak it. Like, if I say I want to go for my parent-teacher meeting, my boss will take it very naturally. But maybe if Mr. Kesavan said it, it would not be so natural, right? Because, so sometimes it's as hard for men, if not harder, to be the equal parent at home, right? So that's why I feel empowerment is a common topic that is not specific. But yes, in terms of making sure the workplace is safe, making sure we are allowing, coffee sessions where we're understanding their challenges, making sure in the evaluation, when we have talent discussions, there's no discounting the fact that, somebody is, a woman, somebody is back from maternity leave, somebody, might be going on maternity leave. Those kind of conversations should not happen. We should be treating everybody equal. So those things I'm a little bit more disciplined about. Yeah.
Nice. I have 2 more questions. Do you think we have time to take it up? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Okay. Uma Maheshwari asked, if found something wrong, do I have to tolerate to a limit to act or take corrective action immediately? What is your advice?
Uma, this is probably coming from a specific experience you had, right? But we all have these experiences. So I think, there are, wrong is again, what is the definition of wrong, right? At least in my case, if it's about wrong as in legally or ethically, or act immediately, right? If you're seeing a particular type of behavior, if you're seeing a particular type of business practice, absolutely we must not tolerate it. So there I feel very strongly. But even there's a way to approach it, right? It doesn't mean that we have to write an email to the CEO of the company and all that. There are always ways to approach it so that your intent is to solve the problem, not to point blame. But those kind of wrongs, I feel there's no reason to wait. But then there are many other types of wrong, right? For example, I had a question once that, I feel like in my company, men are being promoted, women are not being promoted. When questions like that come up, you have to first reflect that, is that really the case? Or are you feeling victimized for some other reason, Or, my boss does not take me, when I speak up in a meeting, then I'm not heard as much as my colleagues are heard and they're all men. So there are often these things we hear, and then I always say, okay, don't react immediately. Just stop and think. First, think about what you can do about it to change, because we can't change the world around us always. So there I say sometimes acting immediately can just become impulsive or hasty. And it's worth reflecting on what you can do to change the situation. But when it comes to very black and white things, yes, definitely we must act.
That's an answer that all of us can take it for many facets of life, not just this. So yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, and now with emails, sometimes you see something and it really bothers you, and we write this email. I always write the email, but I don't send it. I put it in my draft box. Next morning I get up, and every time I get up, I always tone it down. It's like sometimes you just need to sleep on things. And some problems just go away overnight only. So earlier I used to be also very feisty and fiery, and I would react strongly, and I would pride myself on, I don't take any nonsense and all. But now I don't do that. If it's a compliance issue, like I said, I won't sit back. But any other type of issue, it's like just, write out your thoughts, put it on email, put it in Outlook in draft. Luckily, we have that option. Wake up next morning, it will look very harsh. Tone it down, then send it. Do not CC people. Things like that is what winds people up. You CC 20 people, CC the boss, CC the manager. Those things are just unnecessary. So sometimes sleeping on problems helps.
Sure, that's one last question from our own Saraswati here. So she asks, are there times you feel little low, and what do you do then to bring you back to your usual self? I should actually rephrase it. When you feel little low, how do you bring it back? Because all of us feel low at some point of time. So what's the motivator there?
Yeah, I guess each of us have our own, sources of energy. Most people, it'll always be family, I guess, and friends. So definitely for me, it's Arjun, my son, and, the family. And so there are definitely times, you sometimes get a cost cutting challenge. You sometimes have these, negative news, etc. There's always things that, can set us back. But at least as far as work problems are concerned, I don't take them personally. I never take any work problem personally. I never take, I don't take myself seriously either. And I find that really helps because, sometimes we take it with so much intensity and passion that you can really, get yourself all embroiled in that. So I don't take things. I mean, I act with seriousness, but I don't take things that seriously all the time because otherwise it can become too intense. So I think that is just my coping mechanism that, just give it some space and, then you see things in perspective. And then second is, of course, finding those hobbies or those people who give you energy. I love walking. I walk a lot. And I love going for short holidays with my family. So even after joining Pfizer, it's been a busy few months. But we managed to take 3 long weekends to go to the wildlife. I just went to Kashmir for 3 days. So short holidays have helped me also quite a bit. It just gives energy. And then, of course, it depends, sometimes like for me, it's my son or, for someone else, it'll be something else. So different sources of energy. But I think as a leader, that is a big requirement that we need to be giving people energy. So you need to yourself be having a lot of energy. That is the one thing I find that that is the most demanding thing of leadership, I feel, is constantly being able to give energy to people. But if you can find that balance on how to get your own energy so you can give energy, then I think we're all sorted.
Thank you. Awesome. That's nice. So I think I will not take any more of your time. I'll hand it over to our chairperson, Ms. Bhavani, to actually give the formal word of thanks, please. There are some nice words in the chat box. So, Ms. Meenakshi, whenever you can actually look at that as well. I will now leave it to Ms. Bhavani, please.
On behalf of my co-chair, Madhuri, and my dear secretary, Saraswati, I have pleasure in delivering this thank you note to you, Meenakshi. When I heard every word of you, it was a reflection of me. And a run through with my career, of course, not so challenging in terms of what you have seen in the health sector. A career by accident, a life-changing project, a stigma consciousness, a courage to have the feet on the ground, a move consciously into execution and implementation, a multi-country experience, being on the field with a customer, with a lot of learning, and above all, what a wonderful spousal allyship between you and your husband, which contributed a lot to your career and the moves which you've had. It was so heartening to listen to that. And it was something where as both of you managed the change management very well, and I think that contributed a lot to your career. The deliberations which you spoke about in terms of women in pharma, on how one should harness team strength as a true leader, the kind of training which is required for people to become leaders, and the efforts to increase women workforce participation in all functions. The messages you gave, being in control of your work life, defining your priorities, figuring out how to be fluid and still achieve your objectives. And finally, the most important is to win the battles in your head first. Many of today's generation are not able to win the battles in their head, and that's where the confusion starts. So it's been a great listening. Friends, what Meenakshi has done today is handle the session with so much of calmness and composure, which is very deceptive, because I have worked on Hospira India, which is one of their units, and I know the kind of tension which prevails. One regulator is enough to throw you out of gear, which is the FDA. And I've been to the units and I've seen the kind of quality control on all those injection medicines, but still the kind of standards they have to adhere to and the kind of quality requirements, I can just feel the pulse of the stress which Meenakshi and her teams would go through day in and day out. And it's been wonderful to listen to you with all this calmness and composure is one of the things which all our participants should take as an important takeaway. Kesavan sir, it's fortunate to have you in this conversation, which was so much from the heart and so practical to give a lot of tips to all of us listening to you. And you have given us one of our topics for the next panel discussions. How do you manage diverse teams all around as women? It's a wonderful topic to work with. We'd like to thank Deepti Sharma, the Strategic Process Lead, PSOQ Compliance Center of Excellence in Pfizer, who made this work to connect with Meenakshi and have us here for this wonderful session. Saraswati, thank you for passionately selecting Meenakshi for this Coffee Connect, and your team for stretching themselves to host this event. I know the way your team has worked and overworked and overworked, because they are managing so many committees and events. It's not easy. And all the participants for sparing your time and asking valuable questions and making this event a grand success. And thanks to all our subject matter experts, for instance, like Dr. Ravi, who has been here taking time off from their regular work to support us in this session. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Thanks, all of you.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
We'll be in touch, ma'am. Thank you. Bye.